music multiverse listeners, and welcome to Beyond Your Radio and our new show of Sound Minds. This is episode 2. You know, that opening piece of music is Of Sound Mind by Kenny GHB. That album it comes from is Anything But Human. Stay at the end has the album credits. Of Sound Minds. Well, this is where we pick a topic and just let our panelists run with it and go nuts with it. Of course, under careful supervision. Not really, but tonight's topic is the digestion and indigestion of music. If I could get the slideshow to work, that'd be great.
You can do it.
Oh. Is it too easy to be heard now? And is it too hard to keep someone's attention? Speaking of keeping your attention, are you tired of that same old subscription list? Do you need a great new add-on? Well, hell, have we got a choice for you. Beyond Your Radio. Yeah, okay, I tried. Don't worry, you'll come around eventually. You know, you'll get tired of that endless scrolling trying to find us. It's a good thing we're on almost every day. For those of you already attending, yeah, we'll get on with it. Here we go. So back in the early days, and I'm not even going to give it a date, releases would be, how would they be done? How many would you have a week? In the early days, you get played on radio, and maybe you get seen live. Not many people got to album status back in those days. And, you know, if you want to know about that, see our discussion on Dexter Gordon on Unknown Sundays. It talks about how there were no albums at that point until he got seen. In 1961, 454 albums, not technically, because some of them were greatest hits and re-releases and not studio albums. We lop off about 15% minimally. So 385 albums were released in 1961 that were studio recordings in possibility range. 52 weeks in a year. That's 7 to 8 studio albums per year. In 1981, MTV, you were getting almost 15 albums. It's almost doubled at that point. In 2001, 1,726 albums, 33 a week average. Now, again, these are albums that have releases. They have studio recordings. They were done. They were on a label. They were independent label, something to that degree. Now we get to 2023. I typed in 818 releases that year that I wanted to listen to. Now, obviously, that's stuff that's on my radar or a little bit off my radar, in my wheelhouse, out of my wheelhouse. But that's not how many albums there were. There were almost 2,000. So in 2024, in February alone, there were over 109 releases. That doesn't include classical music because that has an entirely different release schedule, apparently, or it's hard to find out what they're releasing and when. Self-produced people, streaming, digital, and then there's Bandcamp. So that's 27 albums per week in February, which is one of the slowest release weeks in the year, next to January and December. So why am I telling you this? Well, first of all, I'm not telling you about singles because that's just too much into it to keep track of. Not only that, radio had changed as well. Radio not only has kind of gotten smaller with the amount of radio stations, but satellite radio came along and then blew it out the door because now you can even have direct band channels. You know, well, geez, Canadian would be right up my alley, wouldn't it? You got mediums of mp3.com, MySpace, SoundCloud, Bandcamp, as I mentioned. Streaming services, which actually started with mp3.com, to be honest with you. Pandora, Spotify. Spotify was actually developed by a Swede who thought to do a legal version of Napster and Kazaa. Google Play, which later became part of YouTube. Now, it's well too much. Okay, you go to the well. It's too much. This is an all-you-can-eat music buffet without searching for a parking spot or waiting in line. And the buffet has every kind of music you want and everything you don't want. Our panelists of Sound Minds have come to the table, or maybe they just pulled right up to the buffet and sat down. They're going to get a plate, maybe, or they're just going to use their hands and gorge themselves. I have no idea what's going to happen here. But on the panel tonight, he thought the show was called Of Unsound Minds and wanted to join us anyway. The Grateful Dude. The soundest mind in the room, Susie Q.
Mhm.
And finally, our newest panelist, college DJ, volleyball coach, teacher, husband, father, music lover, beer enthusiast, the man who put the D in EDM. That's right. Another Jeff, goddammit. Another Jeff D. Young. That's 5. Welcome,
I'm changing my
panelists.
name. I'm changing my name.
Let's see if I make the cut this time around.
You can do it.
So we're going to go around the room twice. The first question is going to be how have you, when did you, and how you digested music back in the day. We're all kind of in the elder realm. Unfortunately, Everett not being here, it's kind of, I wish it would have been interesting to hear his point of view. And then how you digested music and how that came to be. And then the second question, we go back around the room, will be the indigestion of it all. And you can take that any way that you want, but how does it affect your listening habits? All right. So always on the show, it's ladies first. I'm sure she's going to panic now that I'm calling on her first. But Sue, how have you and your, in your music, how have you been digesting music over the years?
Well, when I was a little baby, it all began. My first memory, actually, of music is from my crib. And I think there was a radio in the bedroom. So I guess technically that would be, well, yeah, but okay, now I'm going in the weeds. Let's just start there. And I think it was the Bay City Rollers, but
Okay.
so definitely radio, obviously. Records, of course, were huge. And we have, the little record players, and I had my sister's albums. I was listening to all their music because I was too young to buy any myself. So, everything from Grease to Billy Squire. And then I would say, I don't know, I'm still a radio girl. I know it's 2024, but I don't have any streaming. I of course met you and went through the whole cassette and CD phase, which some of us are still in apparently. So there was that too, and concerts. That Buffalo was huge for concerts. There was like a show, maybe like multiple times a week, when we were able to get out and listen, and they were affordable. So that was cool. I don't know. I feel like I've digested my music in almost every single way, but I still do avoid I have Spotify. I have Spotify, like a version of it, on my phone, and I don't really go into it too much. I still like to get into the car and just turn on the radio and see what's playing. So yeah. And I did go through a CD phase too. I think I had a Dave Matthews CD in my car, and I think I listened to it every day for a year. So there's that too. But yeah.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How has your music changed, your listening, since you've had kids?
Oh, I mean, completely. Like, well, it changes everything up. Obviously, getting out to shows and all that stopped. And then there were the years when you were just pretty much either saturated playing with the kids, working, juggling both. So it definitely cuts into your listening habits.
What about style of music listening to? Has that changed since kids?
No, my kids have not really. We didn't go through all the phases of like the little lullaby type music. They kind of always listened to whatever we had on. Their music, at least one of their music. So one has been deeply into a lot of rap, a lot of rap with a lot of like swears in it that I'm not into. The other one,
Gangster rap.
yeah. And she does some emo. Is it emo? Emo. She does a lot of that too. And then the other one is kind of country. So when she's in the car, the country comes on. So yeah, I'm open to anything, honestly, but um definitely kind of gotten away from it, and especially working remote, not having the car time. I listen less, and I read and write for a living, so I some people can listen while they're working, and I can't. I can't focus and listen, so I have to stop and pay attention. So yeah.
Yeah, it's good. That's a good start. I'm gonna let the new guy go. Let's let this Jeff, this other Jeff, this imposter, this guy who can't come up with a real name.
Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for. I would have to say, music-wise, probably three phases, easy. I think when you're younger, you don't quite know what you like. So whatever's on the radio, whatever might be in your house, whatever song you might just hear and be like, oh, that's not bad. And you might have back at the time, back in the day, how it all comes full circle, you might have a 45 in the house, or your parents might have LPs. Now 45s, I would, once I got to college, that whole terminology changed for me, but that's a different phase in and of itself. I think the first 45 I owned was Rubber Band Man. I remember having that. I remember being given that for whatever reason. And I heard this, and like, to listen to that now, like, that's a pretty catchy beat. And when you're single digits and growing up, you're kind of like, oh, this is cool. This spins, and it spins really fast, and music comes out. Okay, why do I have this? All right, fine. And then you get a little bit older, and you get some cassettes, because cassettes came around. My first cassette was Street Songs by Rick James. Yeah, me living in rural Northwest New Jersey, throwing Super Freak on in the house. That'll get you going. And then it just becomes like that whole work, what you would hear, and hoping that when we went to our local department store, my parents would spring for a cassette in those obnoxiously long plastic boxes that all you had to do was snip the top and pull the cassette out. It's like, why do we have talk about wasting plastic? Why do we have this giant thing but I digress. So you'd have your cassettes. I had my cassettes. I had those big wooden boxes of cassettes, because how else were you going to keep them other than shoe boxes? And Men at Work, The Police, again, things that I thought I would like. And depending what you had in your house, if you had like the local channels, you didn't have MTV in like the 70s and whatnot. You had radio was really all you had, and maybe you had a cassette deck hooked up to the radio, and maybe, oh, that song is on. Quick, find a tape. It's 15 seconds in. I just missed it. I'll record it for now till it comes back around again, and I'll have what's tantamount to a simple mixtape. And I didn't even know it was a mixtape, but that was a whole bunch of songs. I hope I grabbed the right one the next time I wanted to listen to songs, because we didn't label any of those things really, or if we did, they were with some theme that we couldn't quite make the connection to. And I think for me, high school started to change my taste in music for the better, as I see it. Although I'm older now, who knows? I was a child of like the late 80s, early 90s in high school, and that was, for me, that was when I found my people in band. And a lot of them, we now had cable, we now had MTV, and it wasn't so much, hey, Thriller's on for the umpteenth time. It's, hey, there's this guy, and he plays what they call it alternative at like midnight. It's called 120 minutes. And it's like, oh, what's that all about? There's a kid walking around the high school wearing a Dag Nasty shirt, and I'm like, that's a really random logo and picture. And that's the curiosity part of it all. It's like you didn't know, you weren't hearing it really, and if you're tuning in late at night or you had a VCR and you were recording it, you're recording the show, and during a reasonable hour, we're adults now, there is no such thing as a reasonable hour, I don't think anymore. You would watch and I don't like this. Fast forward, fast forward, fast forward. Oh, this looks pretty good. And that's where I found a lot of, like, at the time, what would probably be on like your satellite channels now, your Lithium, your XMUs, your first waves. It was like, this is like, that's where I found late middle school is when I found Depeche Mode. And from Depeche Mode, I found The Cure. And from The Cure, I found Susie and the Banshees. And I was off and running. Holy cow, this is band Ministry and Nine Inch. And then, like, you talk about digestion, you're gorging yourself at that. You're starting to gorge yourself. It's like, hey, there's all these things. None of this is on the radio. And it was never like a how come. It was you didn't care. It was like, I got to hear this. I got to see what this is all about. And fortunately for me, at the time, Pump Up the Volume had come out in that era. And it was like, for some whack reason, I equated that to college DJing. I'm like, when I get to college, I've got to do this. I've got to have a show. I didn't even make the connection. He was in his basement playing all of those, playing really good tunes, playing the Pixies. And it was just like, I was just like, when I get to college, I got to do this. There's got to be, and we knew a little bit about college radio, but getting there, that was like the floodgates opened when I got to college, because our station was not playing what was 120 minutes. It was, hey, if you like this, you're gonna like this instead. So it was all bands we'd never heard of at the time, and it wasn't really frowned upon, but it was very much like, we're not gonna play Smells Like Teen Spirit. We'll play Love Buzz, we'll play Floyd the Barber, and hope you like some of this band that's going to sound like them. And that was where, to reference Sue, going to concerts, going to see bands at local clubs, that was like my first exposure to the smaller scene, where bands might be just popping through, or like, I'm a couple years in, I'm the music director talking to labels like, here, you need music, here's giveaways, here's free stuff, you want to go to a show, here's your passes, like, if you want it, you've got it. And it was, the amount of shows you could see on that alone, it was just staggering. We'd have a clipboard, hey, if you want to go, write your name on one show a week, no more than that, let other people get in there. And it's like, I'm going to college, and Bad Religion's playing down the street on a Thursday night. Yeah, I gotta go see that because I don't know when it's gonna happen again. And
Right.
I get to class, I'd be tired, but I had a killer of a night the night before, seeing Guar in one of the most intimate settings, wearing, apparently you're supposed to wear a white t-shirt. Now you know why. And just seeing all of these people come through, and then meeting the big wigs, like talking to Interscope, talking to Sony. Hey, this band's coming to, at the Giant Stadium. Oh, you want tickets? Here, we'll put you on the guest list. You got to go to this area, go to this spot, talk to this guy. Yeah, okay, cool. And I have 2 kids at home. Our tastes in music are a little diverse, but we do have some nights where we haven't had them in a while, but they're fun. Like, we just somebody just puts a song on, and then somebody tries to match the vibe of the song.
Oh, cool.
And maybe we talk about how come or why. Maybe we just shut up and listen, and we just go around, and it's like we're creating our own rabbit hole, because I might hear something that my youngest is listening to, and it's like, oh man, I don't get that, but tell me about this. What's up with this? And then I'll eventually put on something where they're like, are we done now? Like, is that the wrap up one, Dad? Yeah, because it's 180 beats a minute, it's drum and bass, and I don't think any of you can match up to this. So sorry about that, but that's where we're going right now. Let's put on some Mephews and just rage out here. But we found you can get some interesting conversations from that. Just what one person thinks, like, oh, I like this. Well, this reminds me of this. Well, then this reminds me of this, and you just create your own rabbit hole, and it was just fascinating to do. But as far as taking it in, I don't mind taking it in. I have a lot of those services. I'm still taking in music. I fall asleep to techno once in a while. Some would say that's a problem, but it's just repetitive, and I enjoy it. I still have my records, most of them, because when I was doing my shows, I felt like I had to have all the newest music. So I would, to my detriment and my still debt, buy records every week, wait for the ads to come out, wait for new music. I think it was Mondays at the time, and radio stations had their ads on Tuesdays. You know, who are you
Yeah.
adding to who are you adding into rotation? And I'd have those conversations, and you you would just get it. And my show, I'm like, I need this. What's the and so I'd order from the mail orders from New York, from New Brunswick, and I'd have stacks of records show up my apartment, and later on I'd get the bill. But my show had to have new. I'm not getting paid to do this show, but I had to have
Right?
new
There's not,
music.
I was gonna say, I was
had to
gonna
have
say to
new
everybody,
stuff.
there's no pay.
No, no, there's not. You hope to get some free stuff, but
Right.
still have a lot of that. Still listen to a lot of it. Most of my collection's digital now, and that's okay. We get into a spot where it's like we need some space, but I'm still
Yeah.
digesting. It's good, perfectly
Cool.
good.
Oh. The Grateful Dude now. I mean, how did they digest music in the 1800s?
I know. There's a, you know, we had record players, but we had to spin it around a wagon wheel to make it work, you know.
No.
But yeah, well, my musical upbringing was quite different than all yours because of, as you know, I'm the senior statesman of this group here. So even though I was born in California, I was raised from the time of 4 to around 11, 12 in a small little town in Illinois that had no radio stations, nothing. So our basic, all my music came from the television, which was 2 channels, and that didn't happen until around 62 or 63. Most of it came from records that my parents had. So we're looking at big band and stuff like that. And I think my first memories of rock and roll became, my dad was a dentist. We lived in a 2-bedroom like apartment area, and where the downstairs was my dad's dentist office, and next to the dentist office was a soda fountain with a juke box. And nice. I remember the juke box was my first actual listening to music. And I didn't get into radio until I was around 13 when we moved back to California, and then radio was pretty hot back then. You're looking at 65 through 70. I cut my teeth on early rock and roll, and mostly what we call classic rock stations now, or oldie stations now. But you know, I listened to all of that. I didn't really I never was really a big collector of records, or never. It's just never my thing. Have I bought records? Many, but you know, they were never a whole collection like especially Mark and stuff like that. I would say until probably my 30s, from my late teens or 30s, I was 95% came from either radio, which was 90% of it, and then the rest from concerts. And I did go to a lot of concerts. As I said, we talked about it. I've seen over 1,500 concerts. So a lot of that, especially the people, especially when I went through my dead period of 10 or 15 years, you know, I saw 300 concerts. That was my music, you know, and I still prefer live music to recorded music any day of the week. It's changed a lot now. I don't see as many concerts. I listen to Apple Music, and I listen to Amazon Music and those kind of things. But I also able to choose what genre or who I want to listen to, which is much different than having to go find a record and put it on the table and everything else like that. But so my musical, it's like, you know, the invention of the wheel. I mean, I've seen it go from very unelectronic to extremely computerized and electronic music. And Mark is completely like where he opened up, there wasn't very many. There'd be an album a week, if that, opening, you know, you'd hear on the radio, and the radios were very big about that at that time. Radio advertisement and stuff was really predominant on, oh, the Rolling Stones have a new record this week, or the Beatles have no new one. So, you know, I've really seen, you know, some huge changes in music, huge. But I don't think it's going to get any different anymore. I don't see, unless music does some kind of transformation where they plug it into your brain, I don't think we're going to improve much than what we had before. Mark.
Yeah. I'm on with everybody on this. What I wanted to make was the point of, like, you know, I mean, for me, AM FM radio, my father had this huge stereo Philco radio with the record player that moved out and you played, and I had Smothers Brothers. He had his collection of stuff, and disco was starting to rear its ugly head. Don't anybody take offense. It's just me. I can't do it. But we used to go to the library to grab records. I know what you're thinking out there. The library? Wait a minute. We'll get back to the library in a second. All right.
Our libraries didn't have records.
Oh, yours didn't? Oh, well, you need to live in the big city.
That was a big city. LA record.
Well, you're in LA. Yeah, maybe they just didn't trust anybody with the records. I don't know.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, could you imagine the scrap? Oh, actually, I mean, they all played. Anyway, so when I started making my own money, I got my boombox. All right. So, you know, double cassette. But those early days, the only medium we didn't mention was 8-track.
Yeah, I never used that.
Okay. And my parents had
I
a Cutlass.
had one in my truck.
Yeah, my parents had a
Cutlass,
Cutlass Supreme, and they didn't make a whole lot of 8-tracks. I don't think, at least in my you know, Charlie Daniels band. It was just the popular. There's that. There were hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these being produced. So one of the things that I remember about that is, when you think about it, it's basically how they made the album, on a track. So it makes sense.
I remember, you just brought back a memory. I remember going to Tower Records, okay, in the early 70s, like 70 or 71, Tower Records, and they had no records anymore. It was all 8-track. The whole store was 8-tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And of course CD comes along and does that. So when I talk about my digestion of music, my addiction started in cassettes. My addiction to music began before that, from a standpoint of wanting to hear things and stuff and putting it on. But my first problem became when I got my first CD changer. Now I had choices. Now I got 12 in there. Oh, crud. You know, attention deficit disorder, right?
You had shuffle before shuffle was a thing.
Oh, yeah. Shuffle before. So true, right? So people like Jeff Crichton, who are not on the show tonight, in the early days were the gospel according to popularity. It was who had the better gimmick or the trend to get on radio. None of these other bands. Yeah, none of these. Kiss. Let's not go there. So this is what happens. And I'm going to get back to this whole idea in the second part of this, but radio then started to become interested in education and finding and introducing new music, which I thought was interesting. Canadian radio did a lot with the Rock Report and the Thursday 30. Having that option, I mean, you had your own collection, that's your option. And of course, with what I had in my collection, I had my option. So what would happen is I got to go and, I don't know, I'd spend 35 minutes picking stuff out to go put in the changer, and then I'd decide, hours could be spent. It's sort of like the scrolling that goes on with TV now. But wait a minute, I probably do that too. My wife will shake her
I
head.
do. Mhm.
So now I'm a streaming member. Do you know why I'm a streaming member? This costs shitloads of money, people. I don't have that money anymore. When you said the listening habit changes, well, the buying habit certainly does. And that's the big thing is I don't buy any albums anymore. Holy mother of God, what, 40, 50 bucks? Are you kidding me? It doesn't sound that good. At least I don't have the stereo for it. CDs have gone up in price. The used record store, I used to get $1, $2, $5. I don't think I get much in the $9 range anymore, a little bit below. They got to make their money. So I got the streaming. I started with Google Play, which became bought out by YouTube and sold themselves off to YouTube. So I actually have a whole YouTube subscription courtesy of Google Play. Do I like it? Yes. Does it afford me to listen to everything? Sort of, but it doesn't draw my attention. And I think that's the one part I want to make about this digestion is sometimes people are with Pandora and things like that are exploring through a very narrow window. And at some people it's okay. For me, that's not. I need to have, I look at Twitter because I got people going on about music on Twitter. I don't even do TikTok, so I have no idea what goes on there. But there are so many other ways to digest music today. I think it's great. I think it allows a lot more opportunity for people to be heard. And that's the first part of this. I think music can get out there. Does that mean that it's going to get found completely and absorbed? This is the second part, the indigestion of this. So, Sue, I'll go back to you. How has that experience been?
Okay. Well, and I did just want to share too that y'all sparked memories of sitting by your radio and like Jeff was saying, and you wait, well, Jeff Young was saying, and you wait for the cycle of the music and you wait for your song for like a half an hour. And then the DJ doesn't stop talking and you're like, just stop talking. And and then he cuts in like 10 seconds before it ends. And then you have to wait like another full cycle for that song to come back on again. But anyway, it depends. Yeah, there is so much out there right now. And I think because, there's just so much going on in my life personally that I can't sit down and focus as much, or I don't have a lot of me time. So I do rely on other people like Mark, like this show actually. When you started doing this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know. But then once you stop and you take your time and you listen to things, you're like, oh yeah, there is all this new stuff coming out, and I don't have to listen to what I was listening to for the last few decades. So the streaming stuff, Mark, with me and like cable TV, I don't need 1,000 channels. But I have discovered the last couple of years with my work people, and they are millennials, and they know all about all the streaming stuff. So I get to hear all kinds of new stuff through them. And this last trip or two I've taken through Spotify anyway, you can like hook up with your own personalized DJ. And I think it's called DJ. And he gets to know what you like. And he has his own little kind of personality, and he'll recommend songs like you were saying, Jeff, like, well, you like this singer, maybe you're gonna like this singer, so let's give this a try. Which is kind of cool. I would be interested in doing that, and seeing what he would come up with for me, or her. I think you can choose male or female or whatever you want to do. But so that is kind of a new twist and a new direction. Obviously they know everything. They know everything we do and say all day long. So they're kind of compiling our moods, our likes, our dislikes, and what we might be up for, or where we travel, what we eat. So who knows actually what's going to happen. I don't even think we need a chip in our brain. They're listening right now. So there's that. So, but again, I'm a pretty simple person, and and I'm still fine with turning on the radio and whatever some human out there happens to be playing, I just listen to it. I like to be kind of like just, I don't like to be too pre-planned, I guess. And I also realize I'm missing out on a lot of new things though when I do that. So I do count
Yeah.
on things like this and people to tell me what's out there and what I should listen to and what I might like. So yeah.
Yeah, more on that later. Let's go to our own personal DJ, Mr. DeYoung. You're muted.
This is, I blame these silly technology. No, I'm just kidding. I don't dispute the indigestion. Part of me says then, like, how is the indigestion caused? Like, how is it? And I think one part of that becomes, and I think there's a few places that can go. One part is that blessing and a curse, like everything exists now that you can make your own music wherever you want. We've seen it, we've awarded it, we've recognized it globally. You don't need a label anymore to get exposed. All you need is your tunes, you need a platform, and technology has given us tons of platforms to get you out there. The days when hip hop would have, mixtapes in their trunks and be selling mixtapes and albums out of their, we're kind of doing that now. Like I love Bandcamp. It's a great thing. Artists can go to Bandcamp and get their word out, and they don't need the label to have their hand in everything. And that's not me throwing shade at labels. There's still a need, obviously, and a purpose, and they pick up on artists just the same. But when we joke, but it's true. Like anybody could be a musician. It's just depending on what you have and what technology and how far you're willing to go with it. I remember back in the day, and our music shoppers might appreciate, and it leads into where I'm going with this. I used to love buying, to Mark's point, when they had those cassette singles, the singles, because you would get the song you wanted without radio interrupting because they have to not put the whole track out there. I learned that in doing radio. Talk over it until this point and then start talking now, because then otherwise, be that as it may. Because singles were great because you would get the song you wanted, and unless they repackaged that single as the B-side, you might get just some random song that the band put out. I remember some of when it might have been Rattle and Hummer when Achtung Baby came out from U2. All of their B-side singles were just like throwaway songs at the time. Fast forward to now, we're re-releasing albums with all of these songs and saying, hey, pay, to Mark's point before, pay excess amounts of money for the songs you might already have, and we've remastered them slightly. And all of these songs that have been in our back catalog, oh, you can have them now too. And some of them I look, it's like I had these sitting at home in a little, and so that, like, I think that's, it's not so much indigestion to me, that's like shelf life. Like you had this could have been out all along, but how do we get this back into your hands and make you want it? I know. We'll put it out with the 10th anniversary of this album, and we'll throw a whole slew of songs that we recorded and kept in the vault. And you're going to want this because you like the band, you like the artist, and people would pony up for that. And I think we see a lot of that now, and I think the indigestion comes from saturation, in the sense that the band exists, the artist exists. How do it's been 5 years. How do we re-release this? It's been 25 years. Off the top of our heads, I don't know for certain. Can you think of something that came out on a 10-year anniversary or a 25-year anniversary or later that really didn't need to come out? Maybe. I'm sure Jeff, with his depth of knowledge, can think of ones like, why did, and there's some, truth be told,
Deep Purple last weekend.
I would love a copy of Dark Side of the Moon. I'm going to pay a small mortgage to get one. I'll keep my CD copy that has regular CD sound on one side and 5.1 if I flip the disc over. I'll keep that. I like that, and I've been reading it online now with Apple Music. Apple Music has their lossless now and their Dolby Atmos. I have a system at home that I can listen to that in. I love that aspect of it because as much as I may or may not be an audiophile, I love my sound. I love the way
you love
things
sound.
have the sound. I've got, I have the speaker systems to do it, and I love just listening to that. There are some things though that were remastered that just I can't fathom why they did it. It's like this did not need to be in that kind of quality. It was better off in the mono or in the original. But that's where I think some of the indigestion comes in that will we rebuy what we already have because we've tweaked it in some capacity? And I think my final point there with saturation with the streaming, I like my Apple Music. I like Spotify. I'll use TuneIn to listen to just stations I can't normally listen to anymore that I still want to hear. Where I go on vacation, I listen to their station. I still listen to my college radio station. I listen to the college stations that are nearby it. Find a car now, unless it's a used car that's got a CD changer in it, or at least a CD player. Everything now is set up for you to use your phone, use your streaming, use this, saturate yourself, or to Sue's point, like what you like, keep it here, and maybe the algorithm will throw something your way you haven't heard before, because that's where I think when they eventually get it right, it's going to be in the algorithms. And just I think that's where a lot of that goes with. I don't dispute that there's too much out there. It's what you want to do with it, and why is it all out there? Why is there so much more? Obviously the tech, obviously the capabilities, but how exposed do you want to be to that?
Bless you.
Exactly.
All right. No, it's a good point. The digest. I didn't even think of this side of records being reproduced several times over. Some of these have had second and third reproductions. Bless you again. So Grateful Dude, how's it for you indigestion wise? I mean, this is
It's not indigestions, it's reflux, musical reflux. Because it just keeps coming up. My life is simplified. I do have a huge stereo system. I just upgraded my whole system to 9.2. So now I have 9 speakers in my living room instead of 7. So I do but I use that more for movies than I do for anything else, because I do like my theater style sound. But that being said, music has changed in the last year for me since joining this channel, because it's forced me to listen to things that I would never listen to. Literally force feed, and then you have the reflex. But I pretty much now, my daily life, I still listen to a lot, especially when I cook. And it's mostly Apple Music, or this little phone has 35,000 songs on it, something ridiculous like that. So because I travel a lot, and that's where I listen to most of the music. I have just got off a 10-hour airline flight, and I listened to 8 or 10 albums during that period. So I think that's my life right now. I don't really dwell into new music unless Mr. Mark pushes it on me. It's just not my thing. Radio has changed since I moved to Hawaii, because we have a classic rock, but we have all kinds of Hawaiian stations, which is a whole different ball of wax. Nobody else in the country has Polynesian stations like we do. So it's a whole different ballgame. You go into the Muzak, you go into the Walmart or wherever you go, and you're hearing Hawaiian music, because it's indigenous here. So I think music, and we haven't talked about this, but where you live has a lot to do to what you listen to, because the radio stations are programmed differently and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So my musical life is simplified. I go to what I like to listen to mostly. There's certain bands that have been with me since the early 70s, and they're probably not going to leave me until they're pumping it into my grave, you know? So, yeah, I'm going to have a big sound system over my grave, you know?
Because you never know.
Yeah, you never know who's
Runs on
listening.
solar power, plays a song every hour on the hour. Nice.
Yep.
I got ideas now. Thank you.
Yeah. It's okay. The
The
mausoleum.
next door neighbor in the casket is pissed. Nice. Nice. Nice.
Monetize that and let people play their own music when they come to see you.
There
Yes,
you
that's
go.
it. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
Now you got me going now. All right. So on my side, yeah, there's too much out there. I'm not everyone is like me. I'm afraid I'm gonna miss something. I have this phobia. I don't know what it is. I am gonna miss something. I don't. Yeah. Sign of the crowd. No one's like Mark. Yeah. I would try anything. I'm in the CD store. I'm buying shit that. Okay. All right. Ready. Who the hell is Huffamoose? I don't listen to this. I tried it. I tried to make it work. It didn't work for me now. Then I played it twice since. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Huffamoose, is that smoking a moose?
Maz. I can't. The Ideate, I think. Idea idiot. I don't know. Maybe I listened to this once maybe. But I didn't pay $19 for it. That's for damn sure. But then again, there's other things. All right. This is Push Monkey. You never heard of Push Monkey? Well, maybe Jeff the Young has. This is Arista. This had a record label. They didn't. You never heard of them. They didn't play anywhere. There's some catchy. This is alternative grungy thing going on. And then I know you haven't heard of this guy. And this is Wayne Cass. Sue has. The only reason I have the CD is he sold it out of the bar where we went to see him in Canada. Brilliant. Great pianist. Had a ball. That's why I don't want to say that there's too much out there. I don't want to stop somebody from saying, don't do this until you find a record label, you find I don't know, a publicist, or you find your social media. Here's what I will say, and you can take offense. I don't care. Just because you got a single, okay, and it's played on radio on whatever hip hop station or other station or that station, or it doesn't make for an album. I'm trying to impress upon people that the idea of you can write one thing for that little 7 minutes, 3 minutes, 4. Maybe you didn't even write it. Maybe 9 other people wrote it with you. Album tells me a story, tells me something about you that goes beyond a few fledgling minutes. And I know this for a fact that there are a ton of crap out there after that. And this is where I hang my hat. If it wasn't, now for the indigestion part, redoing, retelling, talking about the past. I don't know, people follow, but album for today, yesterday, Spirit was the name of the band. The 12 of Sardonicus, the 12 something of Sardonicus. Like now I can't remember the name of the album. I never heard that record in 1970. I didn't hear. Hell, I wasn't even born yet. But the fact of the matter is, through this ability of digestion and or indigestion, I was able to find that album. That album's ridiculously good, and it still holds up today. It's 1970. Spirit, pretty good band from what I understand. They had some play. So without that and that connection and going backwards, we don't get to experience that. And that's the stuff of me not missing out on stuff, right? This is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, I kind of want it controlled again, so you can't just have anybody making music, because this AI thing is scaring the living crap out of me. I'm not a fan. I don't think it should be allowed. I don't understand why it even needs to be allowed. There are hundreds of thousands of people out there, musicians, that would love to get airplay, and you want to make it a computer make it. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. So on that note,
Welcome to the future.
yeah, but I tell you right now, so far, for people like me who have been doing and listening to music for a long, long time, can I tell the difference? Probably at this point I can. In the future, will I be able to? Probably not. But this whole idea of like sounds like this, I want an album that sounds like Fleetwood Mac had sex with Toto.
Wait a
I'm
minute,
gonna hear it.
I would like to hear that.
Mark, it
Hybrid
sounds
music.
there was a show I did kind of to your point with the pros of a single. When I was the program director, shout out to 91.3 WTSR FM, still love them down there. If we couldn't get people to fill the shows, it was the responsibility of the program director to fill the show. So the one semester I was doing 3 shows because there were just 3 slots we couldn't fill. I never minded reviewing albums per se. One of my favorite shows, and my primary show was what we would call EDM now, but back then would be
Right.
electronica, techno, trance, whatever, all the different genres. One of my favorite shows to do to fill the time slot was to take a stack of 7-inches, because that's how bands were trying to get noticed. Was they put the 7-inch out, and they put 2 songs out, and if they got enough publicity, if they got enough good feedback, maybe they'd make another one, and in a best case they'd make an album because they had material they could compile into an album. I'd play aside, be mindful of the language if I had to, and if I liked the first side, I'd hit a quick PSA, flip it over and listen to the other side, and as I'm playing it, I'd just be doing the write-up. Hey, and then on to the next one,
Okay.
because we were fans of the 7-inch, we were fans of the bands that were trying to get attention. That, in the 90s they had labels were driving everything, and we were pushing the small labels, Simple Machines, Sub Pop at the time, although Sub Pop did get big, but Sub Pop had a lot of artists that they were trying to get exposure to as well. Epitaph, the DC, Discord, and all of those kinds of bands. They lived and died on a 7-inch because they didn't have the funding to make a full-blown album. So if they could get enough heat on their 7-inches, maybe that would convince the labels to let them where you have enough to put an album out. And that was one of my favorite shows to do because I never knew what I was putting on the record, good or bad. And if I didn't like it, okay, here's a commercial anyway, and here's the next one. I had 2 turntables, so I could kind of mix 2 of them together, or at least find one that I knew while I wrapped up the other one. And that was just a lot of fun to do, just listening to just
Well, don't
one
get me
song.
wrong. I understand the power and that of the single and what it's trying to do. But what I don't like is Pitchfork and these guys just going because the single was so popular that the record's great. I listen to the record. The record's horrible. There's not a single track on there that's you're hanging your hat on. That I don't like. So one single does not a record make, right? And please pay attention to the idea that a person paid a crud load of money to have this, and you basically shit the bed and didn't even bother, right? And that's why I like the digital side. Okay. So a shout out to Andy Edwards. Okay. I would have never discovered Andy Edwards technically. Andy Edwards is a drummer from the Priory of Bryan. Andy has his own very popular YouTube channel now, but he is a fantastic drummer and a theologian of educational sorts in music, especially in jazz and progressive rock. He put out an album. It's not going to be in my record store. I wasn't, that's not, no radio's playing that, even though he played with Robert Plant and IQ and Frost. But he put out one of the better records of 2023 that I didn't hear till it was over, and that was For Bella. And if I didn't have the ability to get it on Bandcamp, I wouldn't have it today, right? And the little bonuses that went with it. And he's got another album, Off the Grid, that I'm going to listen to this week. And not only that, this weekend he's in a band called Nataraja, which I've already heard. Another panelist has already heard. Watch the show on Saturday. This album is going to blow people's minds. It's fantastic. It's ridiculously good, but they're never going to have any notoriety out of it. They're fighting. I don't think they care. They just love to play. And I'm going to expose that for what it is. But that's the beauty of this. And I think while I hated the idea of digital, and probably even people like Tom Petty, Neil Young at the beginning didn't like it either, it has given us more and allowed us to have a history that we can go back to quickly and not worry about, oh my God, the record's half cracked and it doesn't play, or the cassette is stripped out, or the CD's been overplayed. And by the way, that was a crock of crap. They told me that after 25 years, I wouldn't be able to play my CD. Remember that junk? That was bullshit. Just so everybody's aware. I'm telling you, I've got stuff that's 35 years old, still plays perfect today. Any final thoughts from anybody after my tirade there for a minute? I don't know. No? All right.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, I got to be able to put vinyl in my car before I can buy it, I guess.
That would, potholes would kill it though.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Well, and you
Just
and
to
just
give
that-
us,
and you do have, before we go, I have to give a shout out to Casey Kasem and his top 100. You know, I mean, who
yeah,
didn't
I think we
listen to
all
those?
were there. Absolutely. Great
And
choice.
Dick Clark, and you know, I think sorry to keep talking, but I don't remember where we were on New Year's, but you know, you remember how special it used to be when you had to wait to see who was going to perform, and now that it's like maybe not over, I don't know, saturation and indigestion, whatever, but now everything is so accessible that it kind of, I don't know, it's
It
just
kind of
a
ruins
different,
it.
I don't know if it
Complete-
ruins it.
Yeah,
But,
Complete-
but it
the
was something you
luster,
looked forward to. You waited all year or you waited all week for the next top whatever, and that was kind of a cool thing.
yeah, the luster is off of that now because everybody's got a show and who's here and who's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get
Terrible.
that for sure.
I want to have that moment. And remember, when we listen to these things, we had to listen to it because we bought them. And you know, I had to listen to these. I bought them. I paid money. Now it's like this. Well, did I really buy it? And you stop listening. You're not forced to take it in multiple times like we used to have to. If Jeff Johnson and the Grateful Dude went to the record store and bought that Ella Fitzgerald record, that was what he bought. He wasn't going to send it back. He had to listen to it. He had to digest it. He had to, you know. So anyway, I will thank the panelists for this. I know we went a little long. Didn't know how it was going to go, but I think it's important to understand the digestion and indigestion of music, what we tolerate, what we do, and how it shapes our music habits. So on that note, so we're on the web at beyondyourradio.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, YouTube. Articles, videos, podcasts, it's all about albums, artists, and bands. Go Beyond Your Radio with us, a real music appreciation channel. Until next time, happy listening.